Hello everyone, it's good to be with you again. My name is Karen, and as we begin today, I thought we would do a few jokes. So if you think it's a good joke, you can give me a thumbs up. If you're not sure, give me a thumbs down. Are you ready? Here's the first one. A friend dug a hole in the garden and filled it with water. I think he meant well. Is that a... Okay. What happens when you get water on a tool or... We'll start that one again. What happens when you get water on a table? It becomes a pool table. Is that an up or a down? One final one. What did one ocean say to another ocean? Nothing. It just waved. Are we getting a thumbs up or a thumbs down? That was just a bit of fun. And maybe if you know some better jokes, you could send them to me. Could do with a few new ones. I wanted to ask you today if you have heard the words courageous advocacy. I wonder if you know what that means. Well, courageous is about having courage, being bold, which I think you probably know. And advocacy can mean speaking up and supporting something or supporting someone else's voice and helping them to be heard. I know that some of you are involved in Global Neighbours, which help people in other countries to do just that. And some of you are involved in this country in things like environmental issues and food banks, where you are doing that. For me, these things are about justice. And again, I think that's a word we don't always understand. Sometimes we use it to think about when someone is being punished for doing something wrong. But in the Bible, sometimes it means something slightly different. It's about fairness for the less fortunate and about dignity and compassion for those in need. There's a verse in the Bible in the book of Amos, and it says, "Let justice flow like a river, let goodness flow like a never-ending stream." I love that image of fairness and compassion being something that goes on like a river, just keeps going, that goodness is going alongside it like this smaller stream. Just take a moment to sit quietly and think about that. What might the world be like if it was filled with fairness and compassion? What do you see? What changes might there be? I think courageous advocacy starts with each one of us in the place where we are. I think it's about how we treat our neighbours, the people around us, the ones right next to us, and the ones who are far away, because I believe that God creates all of humankind to be neighbours to one another. There are lots of examples of this in the Bible and from history, from recent history. Last week we mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King, who was most definitely a courageous advocate in the area of civil rights. There's Greta Thunberg, who shows courageous advocacy as she talks about climate change and the environment and speaks to governments about what they can do to change things. Way back last autumn, we talked about Queen Esther in the Bible. Do you remember? I wore this. She had to go and talk to the king about something. She had to show a lot of courageous advocacy. She had to talk to the king about saving all of her people. Last week, we mentioned Nehemiah, who built the walls around Jerusalem. He had to be brave as well, because when a king asked him what was wrong, he had to tell him the truth. Those kinds of conversations didn't always go well back then. He had to tell the king that he wanted to leave his service and go and rebuild the walls. But God was with Nehemiah, and the king let him go and do that. And when the people saw that Nehemiah was doing that, they followed him and joined in, even though they had loads of difficulties along the way. I don't know if he had a hard hat, because he was building. And there are lots of examples of Jesus speaking up for those whose voices couldn't be heard, like children, for example. One of my favourite stories about Jesus is when he meets a woman at a well. Jesus was feeling thirsty. He was on a journey and he'd stopped by the well. It was very hot. His friends had gone into town to get some food and Jesus was waiting for them. A woman came to get some water from the well, and Jesus asked her if she would give him some of the water. Now, getting into a conversation with this woman was quite an unusual thing for Jesus to do. Other people would have thought it was very strange, even being disapproving. In fact, when his friends came back, it says in the Bible that they were quite surprised to find Jesus chatting with her, but they didn't say anything. For one thing, she was a woman, and in those days, women were really seen as equal with men, as people that men would want to bother with. Another reason Jesus would not be likely to normally chatting with her was that she was a Samaritan. You might remember another story about someone who was a Samaritan. They and the Jewish people did not get along. And finally, Jesus knew that the woman had done some things in her life she wasn't proud of. But Jesus knew the woman needed to be treated with compassion, that she needed someone to stand alongside her. The woman was a bit confused about some of the things that Jesus said, but when she realised he was someone really amazing, she ran back to town to tell her friends to come and see Jesus. I think there's a lot of different things going on in this story, but for me, part of it is Jesus is demonstrating, he's showing us how to treat someone that other people would want nothing to do with. He's shown us how to treat people with dignity and compassion. Remember that image of justice flowing like a river. I wonder what you feel strongly about. I wonder where you think you can make a difference. There are lots of things and people in the world, maybe it's someone we meet in person or something we read about in a place far away from us, that we can be advocates for. You may have seen things in the news this past year. I wonder if you could change one thing in your community, your country, or the world. What would it be and why? There's an organisation called Tear Fund, and they try to help people in other parts of the world do just this. They try to help them have compassion and dignity and raise themselves out of poverty. A man called George Hoffman started the organisation, and he said this: one person cannot change the world, but you can change the world for one person. Remember, courageous advocacy starts with each one of us standing up for something that is unfair or unjust, standing up for something that is right. And maybe when just one person does it, others will follow too. And before we know it, there will be lots and lots of people standing up for what is right. I'm going to say a prayer now. I know some people will just sit quietly and think about the things we've talked about, and some people will be saying this just in their hearts and in their minds quietly as we go along together. So let's sit quietly. You may like to close your eyes, that might help you. Dear God, thank you that each person in the world is special to you and has something to offer to others. Help each of us to notice injustice when we see it or when we hear about it, and to be people of courage who can stand up for what is right. Help each one of us to be people who are fair and just and who show compassion to those around us. Amen. So I'm going to say goodbye in a moment, but before I leave you today, I'm going to leave you with a riddle, a puzzle to work out. So are you ready? What always runs but never walks, often murmurs, never talks, has a bed but never sleeps, has a mouth but never eats? Let me know if you can work this riddle out. And until next time, goodbye.